How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we have a great dialogue. Me and Russ are going to kind of, I don't know if it's a question we ever dealt with before, but basically we're going to talk about adjustments that you have to make when you used to work at a higher level facility and now you're going to be working down at a lower level facility. And the near future, we're also going to do the adverse of that. So working at a lower level facility and then crossing into a higher level facility. I'm not going to say one is harder than the other. We did a poll, and to be honest with you, they both have their challenges. So this discussion today is going to be about tips that will help correctional staff adjust from a higher level facility to a lower level facility. So basically, in other words, a maximum to like maybe a minimum, or a facility that has high restriction, and now we're going to a facility that's a little bit lower in restriction. And again, in the future, we will go ahead and do the opposite of that. But real quick, want to go over my sponsors. First sponsor we have is American Military University. Guys, if you get a chance, if you haven't already, and you're looking to get a degree, you're looking to bring experience into the classroom, please check out American Military University. It's a great online school, very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. And again, guys, we need people with experience to be in those classrooms. So American Military University can help you get there. We also have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That's available. The link to that is in the description. Guys, this book is used for training all across the country right now. So if you get a chance, please pick it up. It's on Amazon. Also, we are getting some traction finally. Lessons learned while working in prison. My journey from officer to administration is starting to pick up some traction. A friend of mine just bought it the other day, got a chance to read it, and he's already on the second time around taking notes. I mean, this book has so much tips and value to it, not just for myself, but from other people who have walked the profession. And I really do think that this book is like a legacy book. You have this book at the beginning of your career, or even at the end when you want to pass knowledge over. This book will help you either pass the knowledge or definitely enter this career with some really good information that will help you achieve whatever it is that you're looking to achieve. And two other things, we got our cups on the market. The link to that is also in the description. These are good little coffee cups. Again, my old slogan from when we started this almost a decade ago, it's time for our voices to be heard. And then we also have these posters are also available. These posters are selling very well. If you're looking to get these posters, all you got to do is email nassahs22@gmail.com. nassahs22@gmail.com. Hey, Russ, what's up, brother?
How's it going, Anthony?
Good, hanging in there. What's up with you?
Oh, I'm tired. It was a long day at work, and then it was a longer day coming home and demolishing a deck and all kinds of craziness. So,
well, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
I would love to. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I am also a former senior juvenile correctional officer, and I currently work for a private company where we do rehabilitation and reentry work with inmates and probationers at a local probation department and a local county jail, where I'm the case manager for that corporation.
So believe it or not, guys, so actually it's actually good that me and Russ have this dialogue, because we're actually both in the same situation right now. So when we share this dialogue today, we're actually going to be sharing based on experience we are both going through right now. I am at my 5th facility. Most of my career, I have worked in maximum facilities, especially, literally, I would say my whole career. So the course of my 20 years. So I am now in a facility that is not as restrictive. So again, I have to make adjustments. Russ is making adjustments. So I think this will be a great dialogue because we're living in it right now. But before we get into that, I just thought about that when you said what you were doing. Hey, Russ, I always got to get the update on Keepers, man. What do we got going on there?
So Keepers of Chaos, we're getting ready to crack that magic 6,000 mark. I think we'll be doing that pretty soon. As soon as spring gets here, I'm going to try and do some growth oriented stuff on it. I'm going to try and, start putting more and more content as I'm able to. I'm a very busy man though. So, sometimes it kind of goes along by itself a little bit, but once again, of course, we're always posting Tier Talk content on there and several other content features as well.
Yes. And okay, so guys, let's get into this dialogue. I don't think it's going to be a long one. It was recommended, and now it's kind of cool because just the timing of it all is pretty good. So here's the thing. So there's going to be a lot of people that as they either make rank in this profession or they may want to transfer to a facility that's a little closer to home or, maybe some level of convenience or they're looking to learn. I mean, there's many reasons why people may want to switch facilities. And what I'm thinking here is I know when you work at jail, well, there's also different levels in the jail, but for the state, when you work for a state, each facility, even though they're under the same agency, operates totally differently. They have their own culture. It's diverse. And, for me, I've worked in 5 different facilities, all under the, my state's Department of Corrections, but every facility operated differently. So obviously there's always going to be that adjustment. Now, the first question, as I said, that we have for today's show is going to be making those adjustments from having the mentality of working in a maximum security facility, and then now you're at a lower level for security facility that may be not as active, but we're going to define active as well, because activity doesn't always mean, you may have some facilities that are loaded with codes, and I get it. It's a very active facility, but some facilities are active in other ways. So we have to be wary of, how we define activity, because the last thing I would like to say is I'm at a facility that's not active, and I disagree with that. It's all about how we define activity, because right now, this facility, I will tell you one thing. It's active if I'm intentional in learning what this facility has to offer. I can't expect this facility to automatically teach me stuff if I don't make the effort. Where I've worked at other facilities where, man, shit's coming after you left and right, and you're going to learn because that's how this facility moves. It's a different culture. It's a different pace. But having said that, there's facilities that may seem to be small moving on the surface, or slow moving on the surface, I would say that's when you step up and become intentional, and then you wind up opening your eyes to a different set of activity or type of operations. Would you agree with that, Russ? I mean, you've done the transition now, so I mean, what's your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I've worked in 4 different facilities, and it's one of those things where, I've had officers tell me, well, not much happens here, and my question is that just means that you're missing the felonies that occur there every day. I worked at San Quentin and the adjustment center there and stuff. I pulled a shift on death row, and then later that same day, gone down to what they call the ranch there, where there's no perimeter around it. Different facilities sometimes have different levels throughout it. The idea that, hey, not much is active, not much is happening here, just means that you're not aware of it.
Yeah, and I like what you said. Obviously, there's the middle ground where you do have facilities that do have multiple levels. I mean, I worked at a female facility that did have all levels, but we would spend every 10 weeks, 7 weeks we spent in max, 3 weeks we spent on minimum, and then we kind of rotated that out throughout the year, at least for my position. That was one of my positions. So again, predominantly you are working in max. But having said that, I think for me, it may tend to be a little different when the whole facility is really dedicated to that lower level restriction. Because again, when I worked in my career, especially where I just left from, was a high maximum security facility that was extremely active. I mean, we had all levels of custody, and the facility kept moving. You have to be on your toes. Now, one of the things I've learned, and also the facility I worked at before that was also extremely active, code after code after code. Again, it's the inmates that we were dealing with. So the first thing that I realized when I'm moving from a higher level to a lower level, and guys, I don't mean being complacent, just hear me out, because I know there'll be some people saying, well, it's good to have that because when you come down you're not going to be complacent. Okay, I get it. But hear what I'm going to say, because it's basically going to relate to us slowing ourselves down, but still remaining aware. Grant me, I want you to hear what I just said. When you go to those lower level facilities, you're going to slow yourself down maybe, but you're still going to be aware of what the environment is. And the reason why I'm saying that is the first thing I noticed, guys, I took notes, is I need to recognize the pace that is needed. I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So I've worked at facilities that literally went code for code. And when something's set in your way, you want to get it done because you don't know when something else is going to pop up. So you keep things moving, you keep things moving, you keep things moving. And I'm used to that pace of keeping things moving. There's no time to slow down, guys. I got to get this done because this is going to happen. It's the way the facility moved. At the newer facility, it doesn't move as quick. So when I'm at this pace where I'm trying to move things really quick, but I'm not working with people that are used to that because the facility really doesn't require that. There's time to really kind of, move forward and make each effort. I start making people uncomfortable. I'll admit it. It's something I need to work on, and I will work on it. I realize that the pace I have developed through those faster facilities is not a pace that really works here at the facility I'm at. So my first piece of advice is to identify the pace at the facility you're working at and try to work with that pace. So again, even if you're slowing it down, it doesn't mean you're being complacent. It means you're acknowledging the pace of that facility. And again, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because for me, everybody's moving at their pace that they control, that's comfortable for them, because that's how the facility works. That's what the facility allows. And here I am running all over the place as if I'm still working at this facility that requires that type of pace. But Russ, what's your thoughts on recognizing the pace that is needed?
I think that there's something, valuable in that, and that, you should be cognizant of where other people are moving at pace to be held at. But at the same time, I think that there's times where we need to try and shake up the status quo. It's easy to sit back and get used to a pace and the whole, the complacency of routine. If you're not careful, well, yes, now we're about to feed a meal and we start releasing, and you know what? It's gone so well the past few weeks. We decide that we're going to release it a little faster. And then the next thing we know is we've outpaced our own selves, and we put ourselves in a position where we have too many inmates out. So I think that, it can go both ways. Sometimes we just need to really, grind things to a halt. I've been on some long lockdowns, that were caused by going too fast and getting things out of control, and then having the inmates at each other's throats over a protracted length of time. So I do know what you're saying, but at the same time, I want to be careful to always interject that thing about the complacency of routine. Just because we're used to a certain pace doesn't mean that we shouldn't slow down or speed up.
Yeah, you're right. So obviously, when we do the dialogue on the second half, on the adverse, when we do another show on this, but on the adverse of this topic, the pace is the generalized response. So when we talk about the next topic later on in another discussion, we'll probably be talking about, maybe speeding up a little bit or whatever. We got to figure out where that dialogue goes. But Russ, 100%, I want to make sure we get that out. And I try to spell that out too, as well, is you're recognizing the pace of the facility and not in an effort to be complacent. I'm not saying that, but the facility runs at its own pace. That's where the measurement begins. That's where the balance is. And again, you have to understand why that pace is needed. I'm not saying it's a complacent pace. It's still a productive pace. Maybe that is what we mean. Basically maintain the productive pace that's working at that facility. I think that's a great way to balance what Russ was saying I'm trying to say. Because again, if you're at a slower facility and you're moving too quick, I know it makes people uncomfortable. It's not because they're not doing their job. It's not. It's just it may not require that level of urgency, and they're used to being maybe more effective. When I worked at a faster facility, let me mention something real quick. When I worked at a faster facility and things keep on moving and you don't know when the next thing is going to happen and you just want to get stuff done, and also you don't want to set it aside either because you don't want to forget about it because you get so overwhelmed with more things that are coming your way. I used to kind of rock on the 80% rule. It's 80%. Just get it going, guys. It's 80%. Get it going. I can't wait for perfection all the time. We got to just get things moving. And this was the other thought I thought about too. And I'll explain where this thought come from is I was looking at quality versus quantity. So bear with me on this, Russ, because I really want to get your thoughts on this. So I want people to listen to the context of what I'm saying, because I know it's tough. But there's context behind what I'm saying. When I left work the first day, I automatically judged like, man, felt like I didn't really do anything at all today. And again, I was judging my work by quantity because I was so used to judging work that way. But then the next day, I said, you know what? If this facility moves at this pace, you know what I have time to do? I have time to walk around. I have time to talk to my staff. I have time for a whole different level of management that I haven't been able to do because I was so overwhelmed with work by my computer. So now I'm going to go walk around and get to know staff. And now it's not about quantity of work, it's quality of work. And I'll tell you something. When I left that second day, I felt fulfilled. I was able to walk around and talk to staff, get to know what the facility was about, get to know them. And it was a different type of intentionality. It really was. It felt really good. So for now, because it's a more of a controlled pace and I'm not so overwhelmed by work, because sadly, Russ, when you work at a facility that is so demanding with the work, you don't have time to connect with your people. And that's a flaw, but it is the case. You get so overwhelmed with work that, the moment you leave to walk around, you come back, you got 500 emails. This facility doesn't have that. So at that point, now I can shift from quantity to quality and find my fulfillment through the quality of work that may have got lost when I was working at the faster paced facilities. That was just more of let's get the stuff done and keep on moving. And then the results of your day was really calculated by how much stuff you accomplished, as opposed to now the quality of the moment that's shared, even with just a specific dialogue with somebody. What's your thoughts? Does that make sense?
Yeah, especially, sometimes you'll see some of these facilities that are, a little slower paced, a little slower moving. And one of the things that tends to creep in is suddenly, people are doing all kinds of things outside their job because they get moved out of that prescribed role by the inmates. And the amount of manipulation that tends to take place is a lot higher. Because people are, now trying to just try and find a way to get the inmates off their back. And they don't have that fast pace where they can just, ignore them, so to speak, if you're following me here. And so it's a thing where, you can often try and, put back in some of the discipline and some of the ways of making sure that people are fulfilling that mantle of what their duties are and not stepping outside them and actually letting safety and security slip by the way.
Yeah, and I want to mention, I'm going to kind of stay with the productive pace. I really like putting those words together because at the end of the day, whether the facility runs super fast and people judge it by quantity for an accomplishment or whether it's a little bit slower and it's about quality, at the end, what we're trying to say is the productive pace that culture allows in that facility. I thought that was great how Russ was able to kind of put that in there. And then I kind of put that word together, productive pace. So I think that puts the thought in mind that what we're trying to tell you is that, some facilities move slower and it's okay as long as it's productive, right? Would you agree? Is that what it is? Because Russ, real quick, maybe you could answer this for me because you did touch on it. But now with that frame of mind, maybe to add on what you said before. So I just said, yes, some facilities move slower, but it's still productive. How could a facility move quick and not be productive? Now you touched on that briefly, but with that thought in mind, can you add a little more? So basically, how can a facility, move at a faster pace, but still not be a productive pace?
Oh yeah, that's one of those things that's easy to get into, is where you just decide that you're going to go full speed ahead, and you know what, you start getting into that thing where, hey, it's working out today. We've been doing it this way, and things have been going great. And instead of taking the time to sit back, check what your pace is, and make sure that you are adhering to good correctional practices that ensure safety and security and all the other things that we have to do to pull off a successful day, namely going home at the end of it, we can get caught up in the drama of just trying to get through.
Yeah, you know what, Russ? Actually, that's great that you just said that, because that runs full circle. What I said, that could get lost when you're overwhelmed and pushing for the 80 because you don't have time to do the 100. You know what I mean? So that does make a like, and then the facility starts to accept that 80% is good enough, but there's really not much you can do. You know, I have to keep it moving, so I have to move. So eventually 80% becomes just good enough. You know,
yeah.
So you're right.
And then we fall into the trap because it seems successful at one point. Because now, well, we've been doing it that way. You've heard my spiel on that before, and so then we start to fall into the idea that what we're doing is okay. And so I think that that's one of those things. Sometimes you have to back off. And I think a person, an institution, a unit, a department should always be at that level, to always be reassessing where they're at, especially with safety and security.
Yeah, and we kind of briefly touched at the beginning, but just to explore a little bit more, I've realized now working at this facility, and in comparison with the other, there are different types of activities that, can make a facility active. I mean, yes, you could work at a facility that's dominated by codes, and yes, that's how we define activity for the most part on the custody side. And it's like, okay, man, this facility is very active, blah, blah, blah. And, fine. But then there's the other side, facilities that are dedicated to treatment that have a different level of activity, in which maybe the safety and security side, still effective, still productive, but within the pace, their job is strictly, let's get those movements going. Let's facilitate, let's help the program side of things. And it's a different level of activity, but that's what that facility is made for. And that's why it's staffed the way it is. And that's what those people do best. So again, I don't want to sit there and say, well, this facility is more active because it's dominated by codes, and this facility you don't do nothing. I disagree, because for the people that say, well, I'm not doing nothing at this facility, then I go back and tell you, well, then you're not doing anything, because at that point, if you're saying you're not doing nothing, then you yourself have not made any attention to really see the other side of that operations, because Russ is in it too right now. I mean, Russ worked at San Quentin, and now he's at more of a treatment side of things. So, you can't say that, like, if I was to tell Russ, hey, this ladder job you have with the treatment side of things, oh, it must be great to do nothing all day. And Russ is probably, well, wait a second. How do you want to define that? Because I may not be responding to codes, but man, I call Russ all the time. I got to go. I got people calling in. So I know shit's happening. It's just, we shouldn't always define activity by the codes that are happening. I think that's a very limited way to explain the value of the work being done behind the wall, because when you have let's say a facility that's dedicated to treatment, it's successful too in what it's supposed to be doing. Just like you're at a maximum security facility, and that's great. Every time you stop a code, you whatever it is, you do what you got to do to make sure we all go home. That's great. Success. Wow, great. Now for a facility that may not have that, but they're facilitating treatment, they got where they got to go, and whatever it is, that's success as well, because that's what that facility demands. Again, Russ, what's your thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different activity. It can be responding to codes. It can be conducting mass movements, and sometimes it's conducting mass movements that actually causes the codes. More and more, we've talked about that whole thing about what's happening when we're doing mass beatings and mass movements and stuff, and how dangerous that is, and how we'd like to get away from the whole, the congregation of those things, and kind of, break things down and decentralize it. So, point well taken. Not everything is life and death situation. Everything, though, has the potential to be.
Right. Now, guys, there's other things. Obviously, having a good foundation at maximum security prison does help you with your interactions with the inmates. And we can go on all day about how there are benefits from working at a maximum security facility. Again, I do agree the foundations matter. But I think the big takeaways, because I want to go off topic for a second on something too that I want to give respect to, but real quick, just some good takeaways here. So the person that requested it gets the thoughts we were trying to get out is we got to really find a way to define activity, because I don't think you're working at a facility that truly does nothing. I just think you got to look a little harder, recognize the pace of that facility, the productive pace of that facility, and know the difference between quantity versus quality of work. Now, I'm not saying that, when you have a facility that's overwhelmed, that you're still not doing quality work. But sometimes you can be so overwhelmed at the facility, it doesn't allow that, because you got to move forward to the next thing. And next thing you know, it's, I got to get this done and move on to the next thing. As we talked about, you lose out on the quality, where if you work at a slower pace, but more productive, slower pace, yet productive facility, there may be time to check the balances and keep things running within a secured operations. But I will say, Russ touched on it, it's also got to watch for the complacency. So there's a way to balance that, keep it slow and productive, but to make sure that our staff is also still aware that we are working around inmates, and to kind of, be on your toes. So again, very big balance there. But, and again, we talked about it running on its own momentum. So I want to go a little off topic, but it still kind of relates to this. When you're crossing into a new facility, and I don't. The last thing you want to do is tell that facility, especially if it's considered a least restrictive facility, that you've worked at max your whole career, and use it as a bragging point with your chest out and all this other stuff, because that to me, it's just not a good look. It's really not. As I said, you got to appreciate where you're at in the moment. And having said that, every facility has its challenges, and to sit there and say, well, I worked at a max security facility, so there's really not much I can learn here because I've worked here, you're going to be turned off immediately. There's so much you can learn at every facility, even if it's just the dynamics of working with the people. So don't close yourself off right away by using working at a max facility as bragging points. I don't think that works. And I think at the end, the result is the staff just lose respect for you, because what do you want them to say? Oh, you worked at a maximum secure facility, you must be a tough guy. We'll do everything that you need done because of your experience. No, they're going to sit there and they're like, yo, this guy's just a braggart, and I'm just not feeling him right now, because every time he brags about working here, he's putting us here. So real quick on that thought, Russ, what's your thoughts on, those that will be quick to brag that they're at a maximum security facility, now I'm here, and how does that affect the morale, especially if they're management or peers?
No one should be wanting to just rest on their laurels. If you can't, find new dynamics to work within that allows you to, make everything more safe, more secure, because, that's where I've made my bread and butter, was being, safety and security every single day. There's things for you to tackle and do well at your new facility. And if you can't find them, it just means that the only environment that you're capable of working in is, that max facility. And what does that really say about it? He says that you're a one-trick pony. Ooh. We need people who are well-rounded and can fit into any of those dynamics. Eventually you're probably going to find where you want your career to fill out and end on. But if you just want to do the same thing day in and day out, you're very, very, you're flirting with danger, because you're putting yourself into that position where we have the complacency of routine once again. And I don't think that, people want to, operate around someone who's just blinded to, yeah, I'm working max. And you know what? You're working max and you want to rest on those laurels. You're never going to see the dynamics that are at play in that little bit lower, or even a lot lower place. The place that I think I got hurt the worst out of the many times that I got hurt was a level 1 yard. So what does that tell you? Me and my partner, we got attacked by an absolute nutcase inmate, and it went completely all bad. And so, just because you're in a max doesn't mean that when you're in a level 1 that you're not, in danger. And you start switching yards, and you'll start feeling a little bit more of what it's like to adjust quickly from 1 yard to a next. Work a level 1 day, and then a 2, and then a 3, and then a 4, and then death row, and then go out to the firehouse or the ranch or whatever, and really see how good you are at shifting gears. Try that for a while.
Yep. And you know what's funny, guys, facilities that would be considered a little bit more slower pace, but yet still productive. Some people are like, yeah, I'm here, I'm gonna put my feet up, I'm gonna retire. Wrong mindset. I even caught myself and I don't have that mindset. Find stuff to do. Again, even if it's just going around and talking to your peers, talking to your staff. I mean, and I was also talking from a management perspective too. But there's one other thing I want to discuss, and this is for our managers out there. When people don't know you, and they don't know what you're about, you can't go in trying to push changes because they don't know what you're about. When you go to push change, when they don't know you, all they see is unfair judgment. It's true. Like, you don't know me and you're saying I'm doing things wrong, but I guarantee you, if you wait a while and they start to know you, they're going to want to know, hey, what's your ideas on this, this, and this? But if you come in right away, what you're trying to suggest, they're going to be resistant to, because they're going to not take that as help. They're going to take it as they're being unfairly judged for their work. And they're just going to not believe, even if it makes sense. It's like, who are you? We don't even know you. And then you're telling me what I've been doing for this long has been wrong. But again, same dialogue a couple of months later. And, that was a good idea by Gangi. You know why? Because now they trust you. They know you're not judging them. And they know this point you're trying to help them and not do it for some level of recognition.
Yeah, that's what I always refer to as the boss mindset of territoriality, right? Someone, they come in, maybe it's a promotion, maybe they're just been given a new mission at a different facility. And the problem is that guys like me on the lower levels there, we've seen it so many times. They come in, and what's the first thing that they want to do? They mark their territory, right? They're pissing all over everyone and everything. Sorry for the language there, but it's the truth. And they're looking to do is shake things up without taking a moment to figure out what it is that they should be doing that's more efficient. They just want to make their mark, and they don't care where they leave it or who's the victim of it.
Right. And guys, I want to one more thought. So, and this could apply both ways, guys. This could apply just kind of working at a new facility or whatever it is, a new area of your facility that you never really been to. Want to go by my notes here. This matters to me. So when I was touring around, and I'm using my experience to relate to what the person that asked, because it's great that very timely. I talked about not wanting to pass judgment, so you're not looking to make changes right away, at least at the beginning, because it's going to come off as you passing judgment. But you really got to go in and get an understanding of why things are done. And I noticed something, guys. So this is maybe from the management perspective, but if Frontline could see some value in this, that would be pretty good too. You just may have to apply it, or maybe find a way to apply it, because I'm just talking about from the management perspective. Because every time I moved to another facility, it was always because I moved up in rank. So when I did a switch, I became a supervisor. So technically, going to a new facility, I really only know from a supervisor's perspective. But I do have peers as supervisors, so I do get an understanding of also how to fit in. But one of the things I want to mention something, guys, is when you walk around and you're touring, and at my level, on the administrative level, I may have a lot of unique questions that don't just deal with a specific department, but the overall operations and how things affect each other, which are not always easy questions to answer, because sometimes people, when they do their job, they may only be focused on stuff for their department. So sometimes I may ask a question from that higher perspective that relates more to interactions, which really do matter to me, because when I'm walking in, I need to understand how the departments interact with each other, because we are responsible for that as a whole, which is great, because believe it or not, when you ask that right question, people start to look at it, maybe I should know that. Let me figure that out. And that helps them heighten their perspective. So there is a teamwork there. But again, that's only because I have 8 years in admin, and I've literally, I don't know, it's like second nature now, 8 years, So these are the questions that I'm used to asking when I'm trying to solve a problem. I try to look at it as chess. Who's going to be affected if I just move this one piece? But one of the things I noticed that I think is that there is such a thing as a healthy look backwards. So when I'm walking around the facility, right, I may walk around with a supervisor. So let's say I walk around with the highest supervisor, lieutenant, major, whatever it is, right? I'm going to ask the lieutenant or the major more generalized questions because they're higher level and they should have an understanding of more general operations. So when I'm walking around with them, I'm asking them more higher level, generalized questions to kind of get understanding of how things work at a higher level, just a slightly higher level. But when I'm interacting with the people that work that are more of my experienced workers, my knowledge workers, so my front line, I'm going to ask them specific questions about the unit or about their specific job. And there's a reason why. So check this out. So if let's say Russ is a sergeant and he's touring me around and I'm kind of asking Russ about certain things that relate to maybe some higher level operational functions, time of movement, really higher level operational functions, right? And then when Russ takes me over to a housing unit, let's say, I'm not going to ask Sergeant Russ how this unit operates and what's the specifics and blah, blah, blah. That's my turn now to go to the officer and ask them for their specifics, because that's my experienced worker. And I will tell you a good thing. Let's say my dumbass decides to ask Sergeant Russ why he's in the housing unit, how the housing unit operates, why I have the unit officer right there. I would love for Russ to say this to some extent, but here, bear with me, guys. You know what? If you want more clarity, hold on a second. Officer such and such, Mr. Gangi was wondering this. How does that work? And you know what I like about that? It shows empowerment. I wrote that in my notes. It shows empowerment. It shows that Russ has no problem delegating the what, and that's fine. But Russ has learned to step back and let them handle the house. So if you're a manager and you're walking around, when you're walking with the supervisors, ask the higher operational questions. But when you start walking to areas where they have the knowledge workers, the frontline people, ask them the specifics. And if a supervisor, tries to get involved in that and try to answer that, maybe your supervisor is a bit of a micromanager to some extent. That's the time for your knowledge worker to shine. So give them a chance to speak speak the concerns, whatever it is, and then you move forward. I thought that was some really something spot on when I was doing my rounds that I'm trying to work on a little bit better. Wait, Russ, that's the first time we ever discussed that, by the way. I just been taking my notes for adjustment. So I've been writing down my notes in my note thing. What's your thoughts on the, when you're touring with the higher level, the generalized knowledge, and then when you get to the front line, the more experienced knowledge workers, you ask for the more specific questions and let them answer that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, the beauty of a tour can bring out, is the chance to, show some of your people that shine, let them have a moment in the limelight. Also give them a chance to be able to maybe vent a little bit or ask a question of their own. Why did we go back to this old policy when the new one was working, or whatever it is? But give them a chance to interact and feel that they're part of the teamwork, so that the mission statement, can actually hold up and mean something, so everybody's on the same page. Corrections is hard enough in the things that we do without us being in perpetual conflict, which sometimes that's the way that it seems that it is.
Yeah, and guys, maybe we could do a whole show on that later on. It was a thought that came to me that I just wanted to get out there, but we could focus a whole show on that. But I think that's a great opportunity if you're a supervisor and they're walking around with, let's say, someone from admin. That's a great opportunity to give that person, that frontline officer, a chance to shine. And for me, I'm glad that as I was walking around, I discovered that. And the reason why also is when I know where I'm at now, I've worked with most of these officers. I know how good they are. We were peers together. We were officers together. And I haven't seen these guys in years. And it's funny because it feels like only yesterday, but one of the reasons why I'm loving it, because the reason why I'm also loving it too, guys, is that I haven't worked with these guys for years, so I'm very confident in my managerial position. So, that's a plus, and they give me the respect, right from the get-go, because they see a peer who's achieved, and it's humbling. It really is. I can't explain it, guys. It's probably one of the best moments in my career, but it's quite humbling. And to walk around my old friends, and don't worry, when you need to play the managerial role, I get it. But at this point here, let me just remember, I'm also human first. And these were my friends. And to me, they still are. They won't force me into a position where I have to play my position. And granted, I would if I had to, but I don't see it right now, because I know these officers. I've worked next to them. I know their work because I've worked next to them. And again, I walking around them and kind of shooting the shit. Remind me of my good days when I was an officer and the day ended. Again, a long time ago, because now we don't even get mandated now, but the day ended and you can go home and just, enjoy time with the family, as opposed to when you start moving up, you're getting the phone calls, or now with the officers, just always constantly getting hit. You don't really have a day that ends. But just to be around them and be around very good people, and letting them know that, everything you've ever done, everything you've ever accomplished, somewhere along the line, they were a part of that, even if they didn't see you every day. And it's funny because you hug somebody and then you're talking as if it was just a day ago. And then you look back, it's like, I haven't talked to this person for about 15 years, but you don't feel it. You just go right into what we do best, to chatting and catching up on old times. And yeah, it was pretty cool. But again, I thought it was a great topic. I mean, now that I am working at a slower, a slower pace yet productive paced facility, I want people to know that activities, or how we define activity, is rather subjective. And to sit there, and again, I'm learning it too, guys, so bear with me. But to sit there and not understand that and judge a facility because you want to judge it based on emergency responses, and that's all you judge an activity by, or the activity of facility by, you're limiting yourself to a lot of other things that really do truly affect a good, productive operations. Again, just each facility has its own, culture, but its own level of operations that they're responsible for. So, hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say? I thought this was a good dialogue, and I can't wait to do the next side of it.
Yeah, I would just say, in this, if you can experience different facilities, if you can experience different departments, whatever it is, if you have that opportunity. I wish that I had been able to get, more training and more diversity in my career, but it was what it was. I still did a few different things that I don't think too many people have got to do. I got to work for the largest state-run correctional department in the United States, which was California Department of Corrections. I also got to work at one of the smallest juvenile detention facilities in the United States. So it's two very different ends of the spectrum. And now I'm getting to work in the rehabilitation, the reentry part of it. To try and do things from a little bit more macroscopic scale, to try and, impact some people that maybe if they don't do crimes anymore, the whole place will be safer. The jury's still kind of out on that one, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless.
Hey, I just want to say in closing, as I'm learning, when I walked out my first day, I was short-sighted, and I basically thought fulfillment only comes from quantity of work. And I'm actually finding that there's a greater level of fulfillment that comes from quality. I mean, the key is to be intentional. I mean, that's the key. I mean, if you want fulfillment in your career, you have to be intentional. You can't be passive. And I think that's where it all matters. Whatever the pace of the facility is, if you're intentional, you will find fulfillment. But the one thing, again, just in closing, the one thing you should never say is, like I guess you could say, like, today was a good day because nothing happened. I like to say, and this is a Gangi one, today is a good day. Today is a good day because everything happened right. And that allows us to see the productivity behind our work. No matter how slow the pace is or how quick the pace is, we got to get out of our mindset that nothing happened. It was a great day. No, everything happened right because we all were on point and took responsibility of the stuff that we are told to do. And again, that's regardless of the pace, the productive pace. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post my video. Stay safe.